if you can pass presenter role over to Sean, if there's something that we need to see on his desktop. Maybe we could also, I know that in the body of the invitation there were a couple questions or comments as well, so I don't know if that's a good starting point. And one of them happened to be something that I thought was fairly fundamental, the ability, not able to actually deploy a test survey within the environment. So certainly that is something that you can do. So I want to see, is that on the Air University side, if there's a specific issue with deploying surveys, or we want to make sure that you are deploying, collecting results?
That came from a different group.
Okay.
And if you could make your screen just a little bit bigger, that would be helpful here.
I can certainly zoom in my browser, and let me see, how does that work?
Yes, tell me.
There you go. There you go.
That's better.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Okay, so understand that we have a short timeline. Certainly anyone from Air University outside of this 30-minute window, if you'd like to get back together and spend additional time looking at the software, talking about the software, going over any level of an orientation, a Q&A session, we can certainly set that up at another time very easily. As Kathy had said, we're going to focus on our responses to the Excel spreadsheet that we returned the other day. So Kathy, does it make sense just to go from the top of that sheet and just work our way through it?
Yeah, as long as it's something you can functionally show, yes. And just so you know, the Air University is not the only stakeholder here. We have many stakeholders listening in on this. Okay?
Okay. Sure.
Great.
And Sean, do you have that Excel spreadsheet up by any chance?
I do. Yep. I've got that up on my other monitor, so I'll be reviewing that. Although my apologies in advance, team, and Matt. I apologize for contradicting you here. I'm probably not going to follow them in straight order from one through to the end of the list. I may hop around just a little bit, kind of based on where I am within the user interface, and maybe it should make more sense to cover a topic slightly out of order based on how we present things within the user interface. So my apologies in advance. I probably won't be following things from item 1 all the way down to item 18, but do hope to cover most, if in fact not all, of these items. So with that, I'm actually going to begin at the beginning, and in this particular case, by the beginning, I mean creating a new survey project. A couple different ways we can do that. The three most traditional options are to design from scratch, that is, begin with a blank questionnaire, import a survey, that is, import content from a Microsoft Word document with a little bit of formatting in it, and then, of course, using a template. Now, the template option gives me the ability to reach into my library and pull content out of the library. Before I actually go through that process, let me hop over to the Library tab within the user interface. Survey administrators can take advantage of the library in a couple of different ways. Survey authors also have some limited access to the library as well. Within the library, standard survey options, we call them survey templates, can be used as a starting point for a survey project. So they contain standard sets of questions, response options. In some cases, branching and logic may have also been applied to those templates. So they're a great starting point for survey authors. You can also add questions to your library, response options in the form of choice lists, and predefined pick lists, or we refer to them as auto drop-downs. So if you need to provide a list of bases or regions, states, something along those lines, something that you're going to be using on a recurring basis as a list, you may want to create that as an auto drop-down. More information, by the way, on the library and its capabilities can be found by using the online help. But generally speaking, anywhere you are within the user interface, by clicking the help button, will bring you into a specific area of the online help relevant to either the function or the aspect of the system that you utilize. So in this case, because I was working with auto drop-downs, that's the help content that becomes available to me. One other point of reference on here in the library, the video library has some great quick tutorials on specific aspects of the solution as well. They're usually a couple, 3 minutes long, so good reference for you there. So online help, and then the video library, some great content. So back, if I may, to the Projects tab. I will create a new survey by using one of the templates that exists within the library. In this case, I'll just begin with a general customer satisfaction survey, pretty generic template in this case. Almost always I want to make modifications to the survey, regardless of how I choose to start it. At some point in time, I'm going to need to make some changes to the survey project. Much of that, of course, impacts how I want someone to be routed through to the survey. In this case, I'm asking for my customers to provide a little bit of demographic information up front. What type of user are they? Now, there may be specific sections elsewhere in the survey that are unique and specific to home users versus large business users and that sort of thing. This is an 11-page survey project. Well, to apply some very simple branching, I could select a specific response option, like home user, as though I were going to actually edit that response option. Rather than replacing or updating the text of that response option, in the response options dialog on the left, I can use the destination menu to redirect my participants to another location elsewhere in the survey. My home users, for example, I want to skip effectively to the very end of the survey project to capture just a little bit more demographic details. So no matter how my response answers any of the other questions on this page of the survey, if they indicate they are a home user, they're going to skip the rest of the survey in its entirety and get redirected to the survey.
Interrupt. I guess what we're hoping is going to happen is that we're going to go through those questions on that sheet and just kind of tick them off as opposed to a general overview.
I have a question in design.
Yeah, understood. And so if I'm looking at the list, I spoke specifically to item number 1, and I was starting to touch on item number 2 here. My apologies if that wasn't tracking. And I kind of get to go a little bit deeper here as well.
That's fine. She changed the cable.
I changed the table, so it should be good now.
Okay. All right. There's a little bit of, it sounds like there's another conversation happening there. I'm not sure if there was a question meant for me at this stage or if I'm okay to proceed.
No, please go on.
Okay, great, excellent. So in this case, I may want to create some advanced branching as well. I may want to set or evaluate several different data points being captured in the survey to determine what content I should present to my respondents next. Once again, there are several different ways I can accomplish that task. I'll go to the branching dialog here in the left-hand menu bar, where I can now create a new branch of logic. This allows me to point to any of the content that the survey has captured, set a destination point, and an evaluation point in the survey. In this particular case, I'm just going to label things very simply today. I call this branch number 1. And under this circumstance, I'm going to reroute my response to page number 7 in the survey. And now I'm going to add criteria. In this case, I'm going to branch someone to this specific section of the survey if they indicate they are not a home user, they found out about this particular service or product through word of mouth, but not by seeing an advertisement in a newspaper. At this stage, the default is to join those criteria using the AND conjunction. You see all criteria is already selected for me. And in this circumstance, if I need to create an OR statement, I can join all of these criteria together using at least one criterion. Or I can move into the advanced mode and group my responses together using parentheses and additional conjunctions like so. Once I've defined the criteria and the destination for my participants, the next step is to identify where within the survey project I want my participants to have this evaluation made. So the default would be the last question on the page where my last criteria exists. In this particular case, I may want to redirect my participants after they answer the hopefulness questions in the survey project. So in this way, I can take any of the data that's being captured by the survey, any of the responses in the survey project, and use those to create rules for routing my participants through accordingly. I will often at this stage and in multiple stages during survey design use the outline and flow view, because this, as a survey author, lets me see where there are decision points in the survey project, and based on those decision points, how someone might be routed elsewhere into the survey. Another option for surfacing content or presenting content to my participants is by leveraging what we call conditional visibility. Conditional visibility can be triggered at a couple of different points in the survey process. For example, here on the third page of the survey, I have two questions asking about politeness and helpfulness. For whatever reason, it may be that, for example, I don't want the helpfulness question to render to certain participants. If that's the case, at the question level, I can use question options to open up the conditional visibility dialog. This allows me to, once again, define additional criteria, and I can look at the data that's being captured by my participants when they're on the same page, as well as look at other information that's being captured from other pages as well. So, for example, I can look at the single page of the survey project and tell the survey engine whether or not to show a specific question, and/or I could look back to previous questions asked and answered, as well as the questions being asked on this page of the survey project, in creating the criteria to determine whether or not this particular question should show up for me, like so. Again, the logic and visibility interface for creating those criteria remains largely the same, both in the branching menus as well as here on conditional visibility. In addition to applying conditional visibility at the question level, conditional visibility could also be applied at the page level. Again, I can use the same set of dialog options to identify whether or not the page should be revealed or hidden for a given participant based on any of the data being captured in the survey up until where that page exists in the question list. So I pause at this point. Any additional questions about the branching functionality? Any other scenarios you'd like me to speak to there?
No, we're good.
Okay, great. Question number 3, is there an undo button? No is the short answer here. Unlike working in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, something along those lines, using undo or Control-Z isn't a function of this browser-based interface. However, you will find version history listed on the advanced area in the left-hand menu bar. The version history notes any of the changes that have been made to the survey project and allows the author to restore to a prior edit version of the survey project. So in many ways, it accomplishes what many users have asked for in an undo function, but allows for a very specific restore point to be leveraged instead of having to undo multiple times and that sort of thing. Question number 4 speaks to sorting functions. That is, can we renumber tasks alphabetically and sort response options? So I think we're speaking to a couple of different capabilities here, but do please bear with me if I've misunderstood something. Certainly on a given page, I can reorder questions that appear on that page. For example, in this case, having clicked on the politeness question in the editor, I can grab that question and drag and drop it to another location on the same page. Using the up and down arrows, not only can I move the question up and down on the same page, but if I move it up high enough or down low enough, I can even move it off of that page and onto the prior or subsequent page. So in this case, I've just moved the politeness question from the previous page to the bottom of this page. Undo that by hitting the down arrow in that particular case. Pages can also be rearranged. Again, going to the Pages menu here in the left-hand menu bar, I can grab my page and drag and drop it into another location in the question list. We'll talk a little bit more about pages perhaps going forward. There's quite a bit of additional functionality available there. Within a given question, response options can also be reordered. For example, here in my service experience question, I've got a fairly standard expectations question. If I want to render this question slightly differently than how it was originally constructed, I could choose the reverse order of choices option. So while I created this question based on the library to run from exceeded expectations to failed to meet expectations, I can use the reverse order button. What that does then is re-renders how that particular question will render for my participants when they access the survey. So that just automatically reorders those questions like so, response options rather, like so. If I need to edit the individual response options and perhaps rearrange them individually, just like moving a question, I can move a response option by simply grabbing it and dragging and dropping it into another location. And I could move into what we refer to as the expanded view, where I can make additional manual edits to those response options at both the question text and at the response option level. Expanded view allows me to make changes in a number of different ways. If I'm using a non-standard response scale, or perhaps not using something from the library, or somebody sent me a response scale or even a question in a Word document or in an instant message, something along those lines, I can open up the Edits Together response dialog. This allows me to do a simple copy-paste from that external source and drop that question text, or in this particular case, the response scale, into an open text editor where, again, I can rework and reorder things appropriately. So again, pause at this point. Any questions about making those kinds of changes? And did I cover that requirement of that question thoroughly?
Yeah, that's very good. We do want to maybe skip ahead and talk about derived variable, if that's at all possible.
Sure.
Because we don't want the time to go without having answered that question.
Great. Makes sense. And so I want to understand a little bit more about what is intended by a derived variable. In the past, I've had other customers indicate that what they would like to do is take the responses from one or more questions and use that to create a new value and store that new value in the survey. In some cases, those questions are numeric, fill in the blank. So, give me a certain value, numeric value, and I want to combine that variable, create a formula, and derive a calculated value. In other cases, the intent is something altogether. So I wonder if maybe you might describe your use case.
The case you explained is very similar, but it's not a matter of necessarily from the stem of the question, it's from the responses. That's where I want to derive from. So if,
okay.
like for example, right now we're working with a survey called the Workplace and Gender Relations Survey, and they have some responses that are considered more severe in significance than others. So when these people select these responses, we want that to become a variable in itself.
Okay. Again, so if I indicate that I am very or completely dissatisfied with communications from my supervisor, you'd like to take those two data points into consideration, create a new variable in the survey that says communications challenge or something along those lines.
Something like that. So for example, if on a 5-point Likert, if they picked dissatisfied and very dissatisfied, I want those respondents that pick those two to be, that creates another variable.
Okay. And then what do you do with that variable? How is that ultimately being utilized?
Well, they're trying to determine severe behaviors of in the realm of sexual assault and sexual harassment. Some behaviors are not as severe as others, so those that are triggered, when they select those more severe ones, we want to be able to capture those responses.
Gotcha. Well, there's a number of different capabilities then that may be brought to bear, depending on, again, some other specific outcomes that you're looking for. Certainly one of the things you can do is take multiple data points into consideration and use that to pre-fill the response option to a later question. It's a little bit more of an involved process, and we probably have as much time as I would like. So I may just record that video, post it to YouTube, and have that sent around to the team for review, and then we can certainly follow up via email afterwards.
That would be hugely helpful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. One other option that I will point out in response to that scenario is the triggers capability. Triggers allow me to define the criteria for potentially an alert message to go out when a survey captures specific responses or a pattern of responses to one or more questions in the survey. So if someone says this thing and that thing to do two different questions, or this or that, again, the logic is, I think, pretty familiar at this point. I can say, okay, send an alert message to a specific individual. So in this case, I maybe want my colleague, Matt Sherman, to receive a message when someone responds to the survey with that pattern of responses, so they can begin to take immediate action. Any of the data in the survey that has been captured from that participant can be piped into the alert message body, so that all the relevant information, including any contact details, for example, or other demographic information, along with all the questions asked and answered, could be passed from the survey into the alert message to really make it actionable. The reason Matt's getting this alert message is because the response said this and that, and here's the additional relevant information. So you can spur action and review of the data immediately from the capture of that data in the survey project. So as I say, I'll, if you don't mind, I'm going to dive into setting those additional variables. I'll create a video for that and post that as soon as I can and distribute that out.
Thank you.
There were, yeah, no worries at all. Now, a couple questions about analyzing the survey project and disseminating the survey that I'll cover very briefly. Because I'm still in the design phase, one of the advantages I have is that I can skip around quite a bit and go to the Analyze tab. The Analyze tab is where normally I would be building out my reports and working with the raw data that the survey project is designed to collect. But at this stage, I haven't actually distributed the survey yet, which means I can come into what we call the Response Manager by clicking on that View Responses option. And from here, I can go into the Actions dialog, and I've got a couple different things that I can do at this stage. Usually what I do is hit Generate Test Data and tell the survey engine to go ahead and stuff a random number of responses into the survey project. If I want to look at the data from a training perspective, I can set some trend start and end dates. This will go through the process of adding some randomly generated data into the survey for testing purposes. Ultimately, when you deploy your survey, we'll drop the test data, so it won't corrupt any of your real data or your real analysis. You can export the raw data, of course, through this user interface to a flat file, an Excel spreadsheet, or to an SAV file. All are natively supported exports. And you can begin the analysis process by going into the Reports tab and start the process of building out your reports. The good news is even when you deploy your survey project, despite the fact that we drop the test data, we keep your reports. So if you've created the world's greatest survey report, the good news is deploying your survey will not erase that report. The framework for that report will still exist. And as soon as you start collecting real data, those report charts and tables will start to fill themselves out. One other point here, from this Actions menu, while I'm in the test mode, certainly, I can use the Import option and pull data in from a flat file, being created in another system, or from another survey project within the EFM system that you have permissions to. In both cases, when you choose to import data from another survey project, you will be prompted to map the data from that source file to the corresponding elements within your survey. So typically what I will do often is export the survey project out using the export dialog I just highlighted, which allows me to grab the question headers and have the data automatically align itself. Not a necessary step, but one that I find helps expedite that import process often as not. When you are ready to deploy your survey, before you're ready to deploy your survey, I should say, one of the other things you can do is go into test mode. That allows you to evaluate the survey from the respondent's perspective and walk all the way through the survey project. We generate a test link that can then be sent out to colleagues for their review of the survey project as well. And it's important to note that in this test mode window that we create, you can also evaluate the survey respondent experience from users who are not only using a standard browser, like I'm using Chrome today, but IE, Firefox, etc., but also how the survey will render for respondents who are accessing the survey on another device, whether that's a tablet or a smartphone interface. we automatically recognize the device type that's being used by the respondents. And when you're using one of what we refer to as our modern themes, we'll automatically re-render the survey dynamically to adjust layouts and response interfaces appropriately. Now, assuming we're ready to go live with the survey, 4 different ways I could deploy the survey. Really, there's 2, but we break it out into 4. The first is open participation, generates a single URL that you can then disseminate however you choose. The 3 remaining options each allow me to identify and map a list of participants to that survey project. The email list is probably the most commonly used option. This allows me to create the initial invitation message as well as my reminder messages. The system allows me to create up to 4 reminders as well as a thank you message and associate those with my survey. And then using the add participants option, I can either manually add participants into the survey, or I can import a list of participants from a flat file or Excel spreadsheet. Once I've identified that audience, I can then schedule the delivery of my email campaigns at the appropriate future date and time. For example, I want the initial invitation to go out. Well, it could be right now, or it could be at a future date, next Monday at 0:30, like so. I'm recognizing we're at the bottom of the hour, and I think we only had about 30 minutes scheduled for our time today. I also recognize I've been moving through the interface rather quickly. Let me pause before I think time runs out of the hourglass. Any additional questions at this stage?
I think not. We did have a kind of a hard stop at 10:30 or 11:30, whatever time it is. 10:30 here. It depends on where you are in the world.
That's right.
So I think if we have further questions, we're going to put them together, and we're going to ask all the groups to put them together because there's so many on this phone, on this conference call. I hope this has been helpful for everybody. We have recorded it. We will make sure that it gets up on YouTube. From this, as you go through the evaluations, make sure that you write down any questions, and if we need to do something additional, we'll see if we can make that happen. Okay?
Perfect.
All right, sounds like a plan. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care all.
Bye.
Bye now.
One of the questions we had